right, how about this coaching search? We put up with Jerry Jones. A lot of people don't love him. The leader in the clubhouse now is Brian Schottenheimer. What are the odds, or what are your thoughts on the potential of Brian Schottenheimer being the guy at the end of the day that gets this Cowboys job?
Well, I think it's going to be, pretty unsatisfying to the fan base. I mean, it's basically saying, well, we let Mike get away, but kind of like what Mike was doing, so let's just keep going down that path, which leads me to think, well, you probably should just kept McCarthy. If you're going to do this, I mean, it's been a while since he's called plays. I don't know if he'll call the plays if he's the head coach. I also think this interview was done for him possibly to be the OC and potential play caller. So there's a couple things happening right now. No, I think we'll see if this thing goes into a delay mode. I think that will be a sign that Kellen Moore is still in the mix. But this seems to be some kind of inside the building, everybody, championing this guy. Now, why would that be? Well, the first thing I think of is the scouting department and everybody who's always worried when there's a coaching change that there could be all sorts of changes. Of course, they're going to want somebody internally, because that everybody, most people get to keep their jobs if that happens. So I think that sort of thing is in play right now. And, Schottenheimer, he's never been a head coach, and this would be, I think he would jump at this opportunity. So I don't know. I get the feeling that part of this is kind of seeing how everybody's reacting. And right now, I would say most people are not that excited about going with Brian Schottenheimer.
Hey, Matt, Scotty Swingler. I could not agree with you more on Schottenheimer, but I did have a question. With this game next week being Philadelphia and Washington, there's been a little bit of smoke around Cliff Kingsbury. Do you think he's a serious candidate?
Well, Scotty, I think Jerry likes Cliff, and I think there's a genuine friendship there. I've kind of leaned toward Kellen just because he already has the relationship with Dak. But, it is interesting. I always thought it was funny that Kellen gets fired at Tech, and then in short order, he's a head coach in the NFL. He couldn't hack it at a place where literally, much like Baylor, if they get 8 or 9 wins, the fan base is pretty excited. So it's not the most pressure-packed place in the world to coach. And yet he couldn't hack it at a place where he was beloved. And then he gets the Arizona job. And I would say that was a mixed bag. He had his moments. They had that one great start one year. And then they really faded with Kyler and Cliff together. I think what he's done with a great talent and a rookie quarterback is not to be dismissed. So I find him to be very intriguing, but I would say the safer choice of Cliff and Kellen would be Kellen. Maybe the more exciting choice would be Cliff, because it's a little bit of a wild card, and he would probably be asking Dak to do different things than certainly what Kellen would ask. But man, you bring up an interesting thing. I think one thing that's really in Jerry's face right now, and that he's probably a bit embarrassed about, is, this division that Cowboys have honestly done pretty well in over the last decade, or even 15 years. Both, two rivals playing each other in the NFC title game. I think that is even more embarrassment for the Cowboys than usual. And the one team that was with them in the wilderness for all these years of not going the NFC title game, that ends for the Commanders. and therefore the Cowboys, of course, they stand alone in the NFC, having had to wait the longest to return to an NFC title game.
We have the other candidates too, right? Kellen Moore, you mentioned him, but Robert Saleh, Leslie Frazier. I know those two I just mentioned have interviewed. I don't know if Deion or Jason Witten has officially interviewed. You know a little bit about the interview process with Jerry. You've covered this for a while. The coaching searches, the coaching changes, right? Unfortunately, it's been somewhat routine in Dallas. What are the nuances of that interviewing routine or process? Do you know anything about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have covered these things and watched them, but I would say it's not as routine as it is for like the Raiders who do it like every year or two. I mean, Jerry does tend to stick with these guys for a while. Garrett had a pretty long run. Phillips before him, and then of course, Mike had a decent cut at this thing. It's not. I would say it's not like every one of these searches is a little bit different. I think Jerry always is most comfortable with the former head coach, i.e. Wade Phillips, and then of course Mike McCarthy. In this mix, in this group, there's not as much. I mean, you got Pete Carroll, Ron Rivera has interviewed with some people, Leslie Frazier. I mean, Leslie Frazier was briefly a head coach, I believe, with the Vikings. I mean, Saleh and Leslie Frazier are both, I mean, again, big time defensive guys. I think really good coordinators. The verdict's still out on them as head coaches. I would say Leslie and Robert also were able to make them meet the Rooney Rule. So that played a role in some of that. Saleh is more of a real candidate than Leslie Frazier. And I would say of all these teams, the one that had the most laughable Rooney Rule was, I think it was the Patriots. I mean, they literally were bringing guys in that had been like in the USFL for a few years or something, or whatever we call it now.
Yeah.
But the only routine thing about the Cowboys is that it's just not. There's not always a rhyme or reason to it, other than that thing I said, the head coach.
Yeah.
I think Jerry in this one has really disappointed some people in the sense that if Ben Johnson truly were of all those young guys or all the up and comers was thought to be the next great thing in coaching, why wouldn't you try to interview him? I mean, it's weird that they didn't even try to get involved in that. And I think it's telling, by the way, how bad some of these jobs are, like the Jacksonville job. I'm sure you and Scotty just saw where that Liam Cohen just said nah, and in Tampa he got a new deal in Tampa to stay there. I mean, that they wanted him, and he had his first opportunity to be a head coach, and he passed it up because they have a bad GM and they have a bad situation, and it was better for him to stay in Tampa.
Wow.
I mean, I find those things very interesting when you see a coach do that. But I both Schottenheimer and I think even Kellen. Now that would be embarrassing for the Cowboys, by the way, if the Eagles were able to do a deal with Kellen to keep him, and he opted for that instead of the Cowboys. Well, that would be really embarrassing for Jerry, which is why now that they've done the Schottenheimer thing, it sort of allows them to say, we have what we think is a really good in-house candidate. So if anybody else turns them down or anything like this, I would say Schottenheimer becomes their fallback guy.
So is there any like ripcord like that Jerry has, like in case of emergency break glass? Like, is that the Deion? Is that the Jason Witten? Because you're bringing up really interesting points here, like the possibility that some of these contracts are extended or renegotiated, right, in the Eagles situation, or you just mentioned Liam Cohen staying in Tampa, if that were to happen to the Cowboys. Is there anybody Jerry has that he's like, okay, I can make a splash, I'm comfortable with this person, and they'll say yes?
Well, Deion's the biggest splash. It doesn't shock me. I think because Deion's trying to get an even bigger deal with Colorado right now, it doesn't shock me that he hasn't interviewed with Jerry, because like what you want is the interest in you, but you don't want to go interview and then not get the job. So Jerry and Deion are doing a little bit of a dance in that regard. As I've told you, I never thought the Deion thing was serious, but that is the splashy, okay, let's try this. And I find it interesting, even though I can tell Troy doesn't think it's going to happen, but he also is friends with Deion, and I heard him talk about it. He's like, he would never count Deion out or whatever Troy was saying about that. But what Troy said that was so honest recently was that whole thing about that he didn't think this was as coveted a job as most people think it is. And I think that is just way, I mean, to sound like Dave Aranda, I think that is way accurate. What does Aranda always say? This is way cool, or whatever he says. But yeah. Now, isn't it funny when coaches like start winning again? It's like all these things we kind of like their little quirks.
Oh, I was comparing Dave Aranda to Marcus Freeman yesterday. I'm all in because I think they're both so authentic and they're both so very true to who they are. All right, last thing on Troy, because I'm curious about this. He is really his calls have been so unbelievable, and I so appreciate. And he's not like a gotcha guy. He doesn't have an axe to grind. He's not trying to make headlines, but he's so honest. And his honesty during that Chiefs-Texans game, I think that could even have ramifications with the league. When somebody like that on a number one team comes after officials like that, do you feel like that could have a ripple effect all the way to New York and Roger Goodell? You know, the Mahomes getting all the calls and some of the ridiculousness that people feel has surrounded Kansas City and beneficial calls for them?
I think you're right that Troy has really a huge standing, and the NFL office hears that. And I think at a time when Tom Brady is like, you know, doing games that involve coaches that he's interviewing for jobs, I think Troy's honesty and how candid he is really stands out. I honestly think that's a bad look for Brady. I mean, and again, he's Brady, so I guess nobody will care and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's a bad look, honestly, to be spending 4 or 5 hours interviewing these coaches and then doing their games or whatever, and then not really addressing it. I mean, it's a weird deal. And again, I don't know how much the public totally cares about that.
Dude, I agree with you, man. I'm not looking for Woodward and Bernstein up there, but I would like, somewhat just being fair and coming at it with a lens like zooming out,
just some transparency.
Yeah.
But he comes from the least transparent organization in the history of sport. Right? I mean, he was with the Patriots, so it's not like his first inclination is not to like shine a light on things.
Yeah.
It's more to cover it up. But no, I think Troy has looked good. He's always been good. I think in moments like this, you sort of admire just kind of who he is and sort of the integrity that he exudes. And for a league that sometimes can't get out of its own way, even though it's making billions, and again, it also gives it more credibility when it's a quarterback calling out a quarterback, because like the quarterbacks in the booth are generally, They want to take up for each other. That's kind of their first instinct, is to protect the quarterback because they played the position and they have a special sort of empathy for playing that position. So it made it even more credible that Troy was calling out Mahomes for doing that. And as I said recently on one of my mediums,
one of your platforms,
yeah, RG3 used to do that stuff, and I used to think, man, you're going to get yourself hurt. First of all, he was not good at sliding. He never really figured it out. Maybe he finally did in the NFL, but not soon enough. And he would do this thing at Baylor where he would try to get those 15-yard penalties by doing exactly what Mahomes was doing the other day. Get over there to the sideline and kind of screw around for a second and see. And he would always end up in a heap. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, they're trying to kill RG3. Well, no, he was trying to lure them into that. And I always thought, you're going to get yourself hurt.
Yeah.
And he did get hurt one year. I don't think it was from that. He got an ACL, and the Bears lost him one of those years. But anyway, the quarterbacks know exactly what they're doing, and they had to address it before. I'm trying to think if this was college or pro. It might have been pro, because somebody was doing the thing where they, was it Burrow? Somebody was faking the slide and staying up. Yeah. I remember that a few years ago.
Inside the mind and experience of Matt Mosley. Once again, the payoff is real. All right, Mosley, I'll see you today. ESPN Central Texas. You can catch Matt starting at 3 Central or 4. Was it 3 or 4? 4 Central, right? No, 3 to 5, 3 Central.
Well, 3 to 6 for many years.
Okay.
4 to 6 currently, but yes, thank you for tuning in.
I'll see you later on today in the flesh.